Hello and welcome to this first video explaining what a sugar is. Sugar is a loosely defined term referring to any of the recognized carbon ring-based sweet things, but has no strict biochemical definition. These molecules do follow a general formula of a number of carbons with 2 hydrogens and an oxygen bound to them. Simple sugars do have a recognized meaning within food labeling law. Even with this reasoning, the terms complex and simple sugars are poorly defined. Things you would recognize as sugar, like sucrose, fructose, lactose, maltose, and more, are correctly called carbohydrates, but not all carbohydrates are the same. In overall terms, the division between complex and simple sugars describes the oversimplified structural difference in the carbohydrates, but it retains the same preface of simple or complex. To understand what a simple carbohydrate is, it is easiest to compare it with a complex carbohydrate. Consider long starch chains of rice or other grains. These are comprised of branching structures with forks beginning new chains. These form something like a net. This vast quantity of energy is contained within a small, tightly packed structure. This tight packing requires proteins and fibers to bind everything in place. Accessing this energy is more difficult as a consequence. The proteins and other structures must be dismantled to access and then metabolize complex sugars. Complex carbohydrates are like a piece of string or headphones. They become tangled in an unreasonably complex manner, and it takes a lot of effort to untangle it if you want the use. As a broad rule, sugars with more than 3 saccharide units are considered a complex carbohydrate. Simple sugars are fundamentally different in structure, often only a binary pair of carbohydrates, but they are not always the same molecules. They can also be single units. Maltose is an example of a unit comprised of twin glucose molecules. In contrast, sucrose is a glucose and fructose pair of molecules. These are not tied up in anything similar to the complex carbohydrate structures. There are some bonds and protein, but nothing on the level of complex carbohydrates. In the most common household example, sucrose, it begins as a liquid from sugar canes and is then dried into small crystals. Because of this, the structure from water is mostly left, leaving only the saccharide. This means that it is easily accessed and readily available. For this reason, both humans and yeast readily benefit from simple sugars compared to those that are complex. These simple carbohydrates are nearly all restricted to what is called either a mono or disaccharide. This describes the presence of either a single saccharide unit or 2 saccharide units for the entire structure, examples of that being the maltose and glucose. Where a strictly accurate term is needed to describe carbohydrates, the 3 tiers of mono, di, and polysaccharide are used. Generally, it is the mono and disaccharides that are recognized as sugars. The next video in this series will look at some specific sugar chemistry and how the polysaccharides fit into this complex picture. But knowing the difference between simple and complex sugars is a good place to start. Thank you for watching this video. If it has been of interest, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Please post any comments, questions, or suggestions below.